Welcome back. Last night in my rapid game, I opened with e4 instead of d4, and I'm going to go through that game here in a minute and we'll see how well I did. But before I do, I just want to mention that I have been adjusting my audio. I watched, 20 or 30 different videos on how to make audio adjustments, all kinds of audio filters that go with OBS as well as post-processing, and I think it sounds better now. But if you have any comments on that, whether negative or positive, or any suggestions, please put them in the comments. I'll appreciate it. Let's take a look at the game. Okay, here is the board on Lichess, and as you can see, I opened with e4, and my opponent immediately reminded me why I quit opening with e4. It wasn't because of the Sicilian specifically, but it's because when you open with e4, you're not in control of the opening. Now, if your opponent responds with e5, then you are in somewhat control of the opening, because at that point you can decide whether you're playing a Vienna or an Italian game or a Ruy Lopez, that sort of thing. But if your opponent plays d5, then you're in the Scandinavian, whether you want to be in that or not. If they play c6, then you're in the Caro-Kann, whether you want it to be in that or not. And in this case, they played c5, which is the Sicilian defense, and I'm in that whether I know anything about the Sicilian defense or not. And I'm just going to turn on the engine suggestions here and see what the suggested next move is, because I hadn't faced this in months, if not longer. Also, I'm going to look at the opening book down here, which you can't see on your screen, and it says basically those same three moves, just in a slightly different order. The Lichess database of what players respond with: knight to f3, knight to c3, d4 is f3, c3, knight to d4, bishop to c4, c3. Those are the most common moves in the opening database. Well, I did something entirely not those. I played bishop to b5, which the engine says is, it doesn't mark it as an inaccuracy on the Lichess game review, but you can see that Stockfish says, well, now you're at zero, below zero, minus 0.2. I think my opponent might have pre-moved their next move. Nope, that's not a pre-move. They spent 6 seconds on that. So couldn't have been a pre-move. But I think the reason that I played this, I remembered it from the Ruy Lopez, but in that case, the knight's already here. I also remembered that very often in Sicilian defenses, this knight does come here. But as soon as I put this bishop here, before my opponent moved, I thought they're probably just going to play a6. And then I'm going to have to bring the bishop back one of two ways. And then they're going to play b5, probably. And then I'm going to have to bring my bishop back even further, probably back here all the way to b3. Or if I was here, then who knows where I would have to put it. But instead, they put the knight there, which, okay, I guess I can just play c4 now. That's what the engine says. But what does the opening book say here? Oh, a bishop captures c6. Well, that's what I did, right? Yeah, I did what most players on Lichess would do in this position, although not very many have reached this position. But I just took the knight, and they took back with the b-pawn. Again, completely unfamiliar with these positions because I haven't played them in months. I don't have a really good explanation as to why I played it in the first place. But here we are. So I put my knight out, ready to castle. My opponent doesn't have any pieces out. I have a piece out, and I'm ready to castle. So I felt like I was in a pretty good position, even though Stockfish says we're dead even here. For unknown reasons, they put their bishop here. The only thing I can think of is that they were trying to prevent me from castling. And that was their idea here. Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The engine says d3. Okay. Well, because then that would have allowed me to castle. Especially since I've already gotten rid of my light squared bishop, which I traded over here. I can put these pawns on light squares. Oh, that makes so much sense. But instead, what I saw is that I have defense of this square, and if I move my d-pawn to d4, then my queen would also be defending that square. So that's what I played, which the computer counted as my first mistake. The problem here is that black can play e6, which not only prepares to play their d-pawn too, but moving the d-pawn would allow them to defend their front c-pawn with their dark squared bishop. So if I took it, not only would I be getting rid of one of my center pawns, but their bishop can take it. But they didn't play that. Instead, they took my pawn, which isn't horrible, but it does allow me to take back. Apparently, it's better to take back with the queen. I'm still not used to bringing my queen out early, so I took the pawn with my knight. And I had a general idea of trying to come after that bishop, which is preventing me from castling. As you saw, a move or two earlier, I could have just played d3, and then I could have castled. but that ship has sailed, so I'm on to something else now. My opponent played one of their best moves, which is to immediately challenge the knight. No, knight to f5. I didn't think I would put it there because I thought they would just play g6 and come after it again. But then I guess I could come back. I played my third best move, which it doesn't even count it as a mistake, but I'm down -1 right here. And again, I had a general idea of trying to chase that light squared bishop, but I didn't really have any plans here because I haven't played e4 in so long. I'm not sure what the plans are supposed to be, especially in the Sicilian. So I had no idea what to do here. My opponent played their second best move, and I played my best move in this situation. The reason I played my knight move here was to protect this pawn, which they have just threatened. Oh, they played their best move here, bishop to b4, pinning that knight. What was I supposed to do now? Oh, I was supposed to go here to defend the knight, or bishop to g5 to pin their knight. Oh, because their knight's coming after my e-pawn, and now it's pinned, so now the e-pawn is free. Oh, I get that now. Both of those. Okay. Both of those are protecting the e-pawn. I just had another one of those mind-blown moments where like I felt like I just tripped over a fence into a whole new territory. Okay. I've been missing this game after game after game, also in d-pawn positions, except it's a different pawn in those positions. The moves I need to make to defend the d-pawn are not the ones that directly defend the e-pawn, I mean. In my other games, it's sometimes the d or c pawn, but here I can defend the e-pawn by pinning their knight with my bishop. Or I could defend the e-pawn by putting my queen here, which also inadvertently defends the knight. Okay, I just had this little moment of clarity. I'm repeating it to myself to help run it into the neurological pathways, so to speak. But instead, I defended it directly by putting this bishop here, now thinking perhaps that I might castle on this side. My opponent is supposed to castle here or finally play d5 because they are defending that square multiple ways. Once they put the pawn there, that all makes sense. But instead, they took my knight, which is a blunder. I didn't know it at the time. I just thought, oh, well, I'll take back, and I did. But I didn't know I was ahead. I do know that I'm pointed at this pawn, and they're supposed to defend that. Or they're supposed to defend it with d6. I see that this makes sense or this makes sense because they both defend that pawn. Because now that I've taken their bishop, I'm pointed at their e-pawn. Oh, but instead they did what they came to do, which was to get rid of my defense of my e-pawn. Now that the knight's not there anymore, okay. So they took that. That makes sense to me. Now that I've had the moment of clarity, I know that they were going after my e-pawn the whole time. Now I don't have any center pawns. I've made some miscalculations at this point, and now I'm the player with no center pawns. And I'm a pawn down. Queen to g4. I guess that would have threatened the knight and their g-pawn at that point. Okay. I played my next best move, which Stockfish counts as inaccurate. I took the pawn because I realized once I took their bishop here, I was pointed at that pawn. I didn't realize that they could take my pawn until later, but I realized that, but I can take their pawn. And this attacks that, so I don't see what's so bad about it. Oh, they can castle to protect that pawn. But instead they played there. I did know better than to take this pawn now because I knew that that would open their rook up to this whole entire file. So, I didn't want that. But because their queen is here, oh, it says I should put my queen here. Okay, well, I saw the knight and the queen both pointed at my f-pawn, and I thought I could defend that by getting in the way, so I did. Why is that so bad? Oh, it's bad because they can check, but I can just block that with c3, which I did. And they played their best move, which is defending the knight. But I did notice that they're preparing a discovered check. A few months ago, I probably wouldn't have noticed this, but I did see that they're going to move this knight probably there. And then this is going to be check. And I'm going to have to move my king or block the check, and they're going to take my queen. So I did see that coming. And I thought about this. What is my best move? Oh, I'm just supposed to drop the bishop back. Well, I considered that. But then I thought, what if I could get the queen out of this danger and use my queen to block the coming check? So I put my queen on f3, which is my second best move, but it was counted as inaccurate. Now, I did think that they would probably still try the discovered check and attack my queen this way, but I thought I would just move my queen over to block the check. Now, they're supposed to just take this pawn or go back here. I'm not sure about that, but instead they moved it there, doing what I thought they might do, but I guess they didn't realize I put the queen there intentionally, knowing that they might do that, and then I would block the check. So I did block the check, which was by far my best move. And I expected a queen trade here. Stockfish says, okay, now it does say that that's their best move. I expected them to take, and I would just take back with the bishop. But if they go anywhere else with their queen, if they're not really careful, I'm going to take this. Also, I'm prepared to castle queenside if I need to, now that I've got my queen out of the way. But instead, they blocked the queen versus queen standoff here by putting their knight back in the way. Oh, wait, long castle was my best move. That's what I did. Because I did consider that when I put the queen on f3 intending to block the check with it. I thought, well, I can't castle short. Maybe I can castle long now. And that's what I did. Okay, now the engine wants them to play f5, which I totally get. That will protect their knight and then allow them to move their queen someplace. So that makes sense to me. It says if they played f5 now, I would probably bring my rook over. But they didn't play f5, or the second best move, or they also didn't put their knight back on g5, which is their third best move. They played c5, coming after my bishop. That just looked like a free pawn to me. And this was my calculation. I haven't looked at the engine yet. I'm just looking at the camera and the board. But I remember very specifically thinking here in the game that I could take this pawn, because if the knight took my bishop, I would take the queen with check. They would have to take back, and then I would take their knight with my knight, and I would have gained a pawn out of that. Okay, now I'm going to look at the engine. Oh no, it says, oh. Well, it's my third best move. Okay. It says I should take here. But still, wouldn't that have opened their rook? Wait, it says they would play rook to g8 and then I would just leave my bishop there and bring this rook over? Oh my. And then they would take my bishop. Of course they would. But then I would take their knight here backed up by the rook, and they would end up losing. We would end up trading queens, I guess. Okay. Well, I did what I had planned, which is taking the pawn, because I knew it was a free pawn. Their best move is to take it, which they did, and my best move is to check, which I did, taking their queen out. So they have to take back with their king. So now they can't castle. And now I have, because I don't have the center pawns, in the beginning, having your pawns on or pointed at center squares is good. But when their king is stuck in the middle like that, and I can bring both my rooks have access to those two open files, well, one's semi-open technically. So now it's a good thing that I don't have center pawns. Okay, but first I have to get rid of this knight, which I did because that was part of my plan. And I'm attacking the undefended bishop. So they need to move the bishop to b5, which they did. That's fine. It also helps protect this pawn, which both my rook and knight are aiming at. And I did notice that too. I was feeling pretty good right here. I had no idea that it was +5. I thought it might be +1 or plus 0.7, 0.8. And again, that's because of the open files. And I was about to bring this rook here. Does that say that's my second best move? Wait, it's still changing its mind. Okay, I think my computer has slowed down just a little bit. No, that's not d4. That's d5. This is d4. That's interesting. I see what this does, which is why I played it. And it's my third best move. And I see what this does. In fact, I think I even considered that because my knight is guarding a4. So the bishop then would have to go somewhere. I assumed it would go here at that point. I don't know, it might go here. Oh, maybe that's why it wants me to play d4. Rook to d4. And then they would play a5 so their bishop could slide back behind it. Okay, I'm learning. But I played the third best one, which was to check. And I assumed that they would go back one of the two ways. But I thought if they went back to d8, then of course I could go here. And they did go to d8. Was it? Oh, it's not among my best moves to go there. Okay, well, my idea was to kind of work my way around and then hit this bishop from there. It was kind of a loosely knit plan. But I did the thing that I was talking about, which I checked on b7, and the king went to c7. And here, I forgot just for a second that my rook is guarding that square. That's where I'm supposed to bring the knight out. And so I forgot about that, and I brought it out this way. So basically, back to where it was. But my opponent made a mistake here. They need to challenge my rooks right now. Because we're back to +2 instead of +6, which we were a minute ago. They're supposed to put one of their rooks right here and offer a rook trade, I guess. Oh, I don't think that's offering a rook trade. That's keeping me from coming in here. But instead, they've decided to protect their bishop, which I don't think is that good, because they could have protected their bishop by just moving it here, where the pawn would guard it, and it could sit there safely for a while. It would take a while for my pawn to get there. But because they didn't guard this square, I went to e7, so I can start picking off these pawns. That's why, see, Stockfish saw that a move ago. Okay, if only I could start being like Stockfish and seeing those a move or two in advance. This is very interesting. The engine says they should just give up the F pawn now. Either get behind this pawn, because right now I've got all my pieces are pointed at that pawn. All my pieces are pointed at their D pawn right now. That's their best move, is to protect that. Their next best move, nope, their next best move is to go here, I guess, to challenge the rook. But what would that do? Because it would still give up this pawn. But instead they protected that pawn, which they should have done a move earlier. And now I saw it. Oh, and it's my best move? All right, okay. Well, I feel pretty good about this. But I assumed they would move it here. Is that what they did? Oh, what? Sorry, I just saw Stockfish says they need to play king to d8 now. Oh, to come after the rook? Because that would protect the bishop indirectly. But instead they protected the bishop directly, which is what I thought they would do. And then I have this. Oh, and that's my best move. So I got the fork, but they went after my undefended rook. What? Oh, it says I should take this now? Oh, wow. I didn't think of that. Okay, +8 if I take the pawn, giving up my rook for the bishop. But then the bishop will be pinned, and I can take the rook, and then get the bishop. Well, I saw something almost like that, and it's my second best move. It's counted as a mistake, but it's the second best move. I saw that if I take this, I'm hitting the bishop and hitting that pawn. But I figured once I took their rook, they would take my rook, but then I would take their bishop, which would be check inadvertently. They would have to take my knight with their pawn. The pawn wouldn't be pinned anymore because their king would be over here on the e-file by then. But then they would have isolated pawns. Those two pawns would be on the a-file and the c-file, and then these other three over here would be facing off with my three. But I would have 3 on 2 over here, and their 2 would be split. And then we would each have a rook left. And yes, I saw all of that right here. And so I took the rook, they took mine, which is what I expected, and I took their bishop, which is now my best move. They take back with the pawn, and that's exactly what I thought would happen. We each have a rook, and their pawns are split here. But here, after that little plan happened, I wasn't sure how to proceed. Okay, and again, the engine wants me to play rook to d4. I'm not really sure what that does. Is it an attempt to get in front of that? Oh, maybe it's an attempt to keep this king cut off here, and the pawn would be protecting it? And then I could bring my king up here to stop their two queenside pawns. Oh, now it says king to c2 is actually my best. Okay, well, king to c2 is part of that plan as well. Rook to d4, or just b4 straight away. Well, I hesitated here and had no idea, so I just checked, buying some time. Their king came forward, and now I played b4. They're supposed to push one of their pawns, but I don't know what I would have done if I was playing with the black pieces here. They went over there, which I don't think does anything, does it? Okay, I did play my best move here, which was to bring my king up to defend my rearward pawn, my weak pawn. They played one of their better moves, and I played one of my better moves. Again, because their king is right there in the middle, and my rook is on these 2 open files, because I lost my 2 center pawns, I can keep checking to win a tempo. Every time I'm not sure what to do, I can just check. And then but they want to keep their king kind of close there. These pawns are undefended. The engine says they should have just shoved it back behind that pawn, but they played the next best move. Wasn't sure what to do. I'm pushing. I do know, I did learn, and I believe it was from a Daniel Naroditsky video about passed pawns and endgames. I learned that at the end, especially when you have the same number of pawns on this side, if they're making 2 pawn moves, like they're moving their pawns 2 squares, you sometimes just want to move your pawns 1 square. It does mean that their pawns are closer to promotion than your pawns are, but they can run out of time. I don't mean run out of time on the clock, but I mean run out of good moves or available moves, because at some point, whoever pushes the pawn's going to lose it. If you get 3 pawns end up just 1 rank apart with 1 empty rank between them, whoever pushes a pawn, it's going to get taken. And you can take back, but then they take back, and I don't know all the principles of those pawn endgames, but I do know that sometimes it's better to make very small moves with your pawns and let your opponent run out of moves. So that's what I was practicing when I played f3. Didn't turn out to be great. My opponent played one of their better moves. Again, I checked, trying to win a tempo and also to keep my clock. I was trying to stay ahead on the clock. I lost a game on time just a couple of days before this, so I was trying to stay ahead on the clock, which I am a little bit here, about 30 seconds. They played their best move. I played one of my better moves. This pawn is protected, so I felt like bringing my king this way. And see how they did that? This is what I was talking about. All three of those pawns, when they moved them the first time, they went two full squares. And they're going to run out of places to go here in just a second. That was my idea. So I played another small pawn move. They finally decided to crack here, to crack open. I decided to let them take me. And even though the computer doesn't like this much, I put my king in there to get an extra defender on that pawn. And they're supposed to take it now, but they didn't. They just moved the other one forward. So again, I checked to win just a couple of seconds on the clock. They came forward, but now I can take their pawn. And I'm up +7. Well, I didn't see that or go past it because my king guards that square. Oh, I should have seen that. I could have just pushed forward because if they took, I could take, and my king is guarding that square. Well, I missed that, both of those. Oh, I could have just taken this pawn. What I did see that was my king is guarding this square, d5. So I checked there, knowing that they can't come here, but I didn't realize, oh, they can go here, and that's actually their best move because now they can get to my back pawn. But I know that if they head that way, then they've left their f pawn. That's why I'm still up +7, even though I'm only up a pawn in this situation. And I think I'm coordinating my rook with my king and my pawns fairly well, if not perfectly. That's not horrible. I think the engine was saying I should have taken with my pawn, and I remember considering it, but I wanted to keep those three together, which I guess isn't guaranteed once this moves forward. Actually, yes, once that moves forward, I can just go past it. Okay. Well, they were supposed to go to g8 here, but they went to f8 instead, which I thought was really good of them at the time, because I had, as I just said, when their king goes after my back pawn, I'm going to win that f pawn. Well, they're keeping that from happening, so I understand why they did that. And why push this? If they take, I take, and I've got connected passed pawns. They did take, and I did take back, so now I have connected passed pawns. They did their best move here, which is to go after that one, and I pushed that. I know I can protect it. It's not protected right now, but if they come after it with the rook, I can get right behind it with my king. I can put my rook beside it, depending on where their rook goes. I can put my rook behind it. So and then once I get out of the way of this pawn, I can, of course, bring it up to protect my passed b pawn as well. Okay, but they took my rearward pawn. I moved my king up behind the pawn as I had planned, and again, I'm planning on bringing this one up too, but now they can take another one of my pawns. But they're not supposed to. They did. That allows me to push to b7. And if they bring their rook, I can get closer. They pushed a pawn. I didn't want to let this just go by. Is it my best move to take it? No, it's actually not. Oh, rook to c8's my best move now. I considered it, but I didn't know. I should have stopped and calculated. I'm ahead a minute now. As I said, I was playing relatively quickly. I was using those quick checks on the middle ranks, the middle files, to gain time. Every time I wasn't sure which pawn to move, I would just check them real quick, and then I would think on their time. So I'm up more than a minute now. I should have taken the time to count. If I put my rook down here, if they take it, I queen immediately. If they don't take it, I can queen behind my rook. And this still has 1, 2, 3 squares to promotion. I should have seen that at this point. But I chickened out, and I took their pawn, knowing that they were going to take right back, which they're not supposed to. They're supposed to go to rook to b8, rook to e8. Wait, what does e8 do? Or d8? I'm not sure what either one of those do. They did what I thought they would do and what I would probably do if I had been in their shoes, which was to take my pawn, but that makes it much worse for them because now I can play rook c8 again. But I didn't. I played my second best move, which took away half of my advantage. I took their h pawn. Now they're supposed to get behind my pawn, but they didn't. They pushed their g pawn. Well, I'm going to get behind it, which that's the whole reason I brought my rook over here, was to get behind this pawn. And I'm willing to sacrifice my rook for that pawn if it means I can promote this one. Also, I have a whole nother pawn on the c file that their king cannot get to while also protecting this pawn. And their king is going to be 1 rank further away after I sacrifice my rook for it. That's what I was thinking. But it's going to be a couple of turns because I've got to be able to get this b pawn promoted first, which they would probably have to sacrifice their rook for. But then that's when I have the whole other pawn. Okay. Well, they didn't play their best move, which was to get in front of my b pawn, and they pushed that pawn again. And I did what I said I was going to do, which is to go protect this pawn. They brought their king down because they know they have to protect this one. But again, I'm willing to sacrifice for it. Now, Stockfish says, just wait a little bit. Why not go ahead and bring your c pawn up here? I just went ahead and played king to a7 because I'm ready to promote this now. Get rid of their rook. And then when they promote, I'll get theirs. And then I'll have this pawn that they can't catch. That was my plan. And the computer says that they're basically supposed to promote their g pawn now, or play king to f3, which I don't understand, or rook to f7, which would pin my pawn to my king. But that one wouldn't work at all because I would just move forward. And if they checked again, I would promote it. But anyway, they did play rook to f7. Oh, wow. Well, that's their best move. That was their thought. So I played king to a8, which is what I just said I would do. And they took that pawn for the rook. Okay, well, I'm not sure the computer counted their next move as inaccurate, but it's one of the top 3 listed moves. Stockfish says it doesn't matter. You can promote it to a knight, promote it to a queen, promote it to a rook. It doesn't matter. I'm going to take it either way. You see the engine down there, right? It has checkmate in 15 if they promote to a knight and lose it. Checkmate in 18 if they promote it to a queen or a rook and lose it. That doesn't make any sense because either way, my rook's going to end up here and they're going to take it. So it should be checkmate in 15 either way. This is one case where I think maybe the humans are slightly smarter than the engine, possibly because of intuition, which AI doesn't have yet, not like we do. We know that that's going to be the exact same position. We don't have to calculate that these pieces are all going to be in the same place no matter what they promote to, if I capture it with my rook and if they take my rook back, which is what the engine says they would do. Well, they promoted to a queen, and I took it, and they took back. And so yeah, I had calculated this quite a few moves earlier, and I was pretty proud of that. So I won the first game that I opened with e4 in a long time. And Enda was ahead most of the game. I don't know if you can see the the evaluation chart down here. The last time I was behind was here, when I moved the queen there. And what did it say I should have done instead? It said I should have played the bishop here. That's the last time I was behind because they played that and I was ahead ever since. So anyway, it went pretty well. I'm probably not going to continue playing e5 just because of what I said at the very beginning. Whenever you play e5, you're not in control of the opening for that next move. Black is. They can choose to play when I play e4, they can choose to play e5, or they can play c6, or c5, or d5, or d6, or e6, or any number of other openings, and you're not pushing it. But when I open with d4, we're basically in a queen's pawn opening, no matter what they do. It might go different ways depending on what they know or how they play, but we're still in a queen's pawn opening. So I'll probably stick with that. I do thank you for watching. As I said in the beginning, if you notice anything irritating or whatever about the audio, please mention it in the comments so I can try to continue working to fix it, as I have been tweaking it lately, trying to make it better. I just want it to be pleasant, and I want it to sound more like you would hear my voice sound in a room if I was just talking to you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.